Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we have entered day 145 of the ongoing war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. Today, as we continue to watch the conflict, Russian forces continue their attack towards the town of Seversk, located here where my cursor is circling. And more importantly, they continue their attack northeast of Seversk on the western bank of the Donets River. Again, we're looking at the Russians as opposed to launching river crossings across the Donets River, east of Izum and west of Lysychansk. We anticipate that the Russian forces will continue to roll up Ukrainian forces along the western side of the bank, or in this case, would be more or less the southern side of the bank. In this case, but the Russians apparently, as we speak, are raining down massive amounts of artillery upon Ukrainian positions in this area, and have really restricted the movement of Ukrainian forces in this area. Obviously, the orangish or reddish in color is what is controlled by the Russians. The beige is currently disputed, quite possibly controlled by Russian forces. Additionally, we have received reports that indicate that the Kremlin has given direct orders for the armed forces of Russia to seize all of the Kharkiv region. That is this area here, and more importantly, the second largest city in the Ukraine, which is Kharkov, located in this area right here. You can clearly see on the map, call it Kharkiv, Kharkov. I am used to World War II history, in which it was called Kharkov, and that's why I pronounce it as such. Kharkiv. It really doesn't make a difference to me, though. But as I talked about before, in terms of what would be the Russians' war goals and war aims, obviously, initially, I do believe the Russian forces were looking to decapitate the government in Kiev and seize control of Kiev, and however that was an unsuccessful operation. It was, again, a fairly operation of a very, very large scale that I really did not foresee. I figured it would be more of a localized operation towards Luhansk, Donetsk, and then quite possibly the land corridor to Odessa, and obviously, if I'm sorry, not to Odessa, the Crimea and Sevastopol, but if things went well, I would not have ruled out that the Russians would have attempted to take all territory east of the Dnieper River, and that just simply makes the most strategic sense for Russia in terms of having that key terrain feature separating Russia proper from the more NATO-aligned West. But looking at Kharkov, obviously, it is probably a very, very important war goal or war aim for Russian forces. Outside of seizing control of the rest of Donetsk, creating that direct land corridor from Donetsk down towards the Crimea, and seizing control of Mariupol and Melitopol. Was of a high degree of importance. Now, probably the next phase of the operation, again, outside of seizing the remaining areas of the Donetsk region, this area here is the area that the Russians still do not control, and that includes the city of Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. And the next phase of the operation would in all likelihood entail the Russians seizing control of the second largest city, which is Kharkov. I just do not see this conflict ending in a scenario in which the Russians would not control Kharkov. Again, going back to what the strategic situation looks like on the ground after the conflict ends, and then you have to also consider the idea that, in all likelihood, however this goes, outside of the complete conquest of Ukraine by Russian forces, what remains of Ukraine? Is it an area that would be west of the Dnieper River? Is it an area that also has a fairly significant footprint on the eastern side of the Dnieper River as well? However that looks, the Ukrainians can expect that the West will, in all probability, very much rearm that nation state. And when I say rearm, there sounds like there is contingency plans for the direct delivery of F-16s, possibly F-15s, and a host of weapon systems that would greatly strengthen Ukrainian forces post-conflict. And I have to ask myself, is that something that the United States, who may be growing tired of this conflict, some of the European nations, Germany, what have you, who are also growing tired of this conflict, use that as a bargaining chip to the current Ukrainian leadership, meaning give away some territory and then we will rearm you. And then obviously what happens then? I think at that point you're simply pausing the conflict for even a greater conflict at a later date, especially if the Ukrainians are able to rearm the way that indeed the West in all probability will rearm Ukraine. And then that puts the ball back into the Kremlin's court in terms of them even accepting that option. And that leads me to believe again that the best outcome for the Russians is going to seize all territory east of the Dnieper River. Again, a heavily rearmed Ukraine minus all territory east of the Dnieper River is going to be a much weaker Ukraine than if it were to possess roughly the current area it possesses now. At the same time, I do believe the Kremlin would have quite a bit of egg on its face in terms of not being able to achieve certain objectives. I understand that many Russian supporters believe that this was some sort of diversionary attack, and I can tell you, I am 100% certain this was not what that was. This was a concerted effort to seize control of Kiev, not a diversionary attack. There were different ways that the Russian military could have used its forces to create that diversion without sustaining the type of losses that were incurred in that northern operation. But at the same time, right now, I just don't see the Kremlin accepting any kind of status quo that looks like what it does right now. At least, very least, Russia attempts to seize control of Kharkov and the rest of the Kharkov region, all of Donetsk, obviously, and in all probability, they want to roll things up and wrap up Zaporizhzhia as well, probably all the way up to here. And I think that is bottom line acceptance on what the Kremlin will probably accept. I do think their war goal still is to bring down the current Ukrainian government and seeks to quite possibly puppet Ukraine in terms of having some sort of Russian-sponsored government in Ukraine, or at the very least at this point, all territory east of the Dnieper River. If I was the battlefield commander looking at things and was in charge at the Kremlin, I quite frankly would not accept anything less than all territory east of the Dnieper River. And therein lies the impasse. I don't believe that the current Ukrainian government nor the Western nations that are assisting the Ukrainian government will allow that. And so hence we will have continued warfare taking place in the region. Other news: we have received reports that Russia is redeploying some of its warships out of Sevastopol and redeploying these naval assets to other areas further away from the conflict zone. And the reason for that is the possibility that Ukraine could be receiving weapon systems, quite possibly looking forward, the ATACMS or other systems in which we would see the Ukrainians attack the ports around Sevastopol, located in the Crimea. Obviously, that would be what the Kremlin would view as a escalation, and there has been some statements about that possible escalation as well. But it sounds like the Kremlin is making prudent moves, at least on the surface, of removing some of those vessels as the Russians can maintain a blockade of Ukrainian ports from a greater distance and using tactical air assets to block any sort of movement out of Odessa or other Ukrainian ports that are still serviceable. But that is it for today. Again, we're going to continue to watch the directional attack towards Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, and the continued Russian preparation for a much larger offensive to wrap things up within the vicinity of Donetsk. And then obviously the number 2 goal of Kharkov, and then quite possibly more extensive operations in other areas of the country. But that's it for today. Obviously, again, thanks for joining us, and we will have more very, very soon. I bid you good day.